Commander Yuki couldn't believe what he was seeing on his screen. The massive display that usually showed empty space around their home planet was now lit up with warning signals. A huge human warship had just appeared out of nowhere, floating right above Vorthan Prime like it owned the place. "This is impossible," Yuki muttered, rubbing his eyes and looking again. The ship was still there, bigger than anything in their fleet. Lieutenant Hana turned around from her control station, her face pale with shock. "Sir, I've run the scans 3 times. Our quantum detection systems show absolutely nothing. No energy. Trails, no warp signatures, no radiation. It's like this ship just popped into existence." The bridge of the Imperial Command Center buzzed with nervous energy. Officers who had served for decades had never seen anything like this. Their early warning systems were supposed to be perfect. They could detect a single fighter craft from 3 star systems away. But somehow this enormous human battleship had appeared without triggering a single alarm. Admiral Zhou, a veteran of countless space battles, felt his stomach drop. He'd been confident in their technology for over 30 years. The Galactic. Empire's sensors were the most advanced in known space. They'd built their entire military strategy around the fact that nothing could sneak up on them. Yet here was proof that their assumptions were completely wrong. The human ship was beautiful, in a terrifying way. Its hull gleamed with some kind of metal they'd never seen before. Strange blue lights pulsed along its sides, and the ship seemed to shimmer slightly, as if it wasn't quite solid. It was at least twice the size of their largest battlecruiser, with weapon ports that looked like they could level entire cities. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Bin from across the room, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human woman in a crisp blue uniform. She appeared calm and professional, like someone attending a routine business meeting, rather than someone who had just performed an impossible military feat. "Vorthan Command, this is Captain Mira of the United Earthship Thunder. We request immediate audience with your Galactic Council." Admiral Zhou tried to keep his voice steady as he responded. "Captain Mira, I am Admiral Zhou of the Imperial Fleet. How did your vessel bypass our detection systems?" Captain Mira smiled slightly, and Zhou noticed she didn't look surprised by the question. "Admiral, we've been monitoring your communication, networks and defense systems for several decades now. Your security protocols are quite impressive, but they have certain limitations." The words hit the command center like a physical blow. Lieutenant Hana dropped her stylus. Commander Yuki's mouth fell open. Several junior officers exchanged worried glances. "Decades," Admiral Zhou repeated, trying to process what he'd just heard. "Our intelligence reports indicate that humans only achieved basic interstellar travel 50 years ago. You were supposed to be limited to your home solar system." "Your intelligence reports are incomplete, Admiral," Captain Mira replied with the same calm tone. "The information you've gathered represents only what we chose to reveal." In the background of the command center, analysts frantically pulled up files on human civilization. Every report they had suggested the same thing. Humans were a young species, still struggling with basic space technology. They had a few small colonies, limited military capabilities, and posed no threat to the Empire's expansion plans. But if this Captain Mira was telling the truth, everything they knew was wrong. "We've been observing your expansion patterns across the galaxy," Captain Mira continued. "Your military operations in the Andrex sector, your mining operations near the Kelvin Nebula, your recent diplomatic missions to the Outer Rim worlds. We've found your activities quite educational." General Tay, who had just arrived on the bridge, went white as a sheet. The operations she was mentioning were classified at the highest levels. Some of them were so secret that only a handful of people in the entire Empire knew about them. "How could you possibly know about those missions?" General Tay demanded. "General, the Terran Federation has been taking what you might call the long view since your people first made contact with Earth. We've found it wise to thoroughly understand our neighbors before making formal diplomatic contact." The implications were staggering. If humans had been secretly watching the Empire for decades, if they had technology that could make their ships completely invisible, if they knew about classified military operations, then the balance of power in the galaxy might not be what anyone thought it was. Commander Yuki looked at his tactical display again. The human ship just sat there peacefully, but now it seemed less like a lost vessel and more like a predator that had been patiently stalking its prey. "Captain Mira," Admiral Zhou said carefully, "what exactly does the Terran Federation want?" "From the Galactic Empire." "That, Admiral, is a conversation best held with your full council present. We have some things to discuss that will affect the future of every civilization in this galaxy." The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial Command Center in stunned silence. The Galactic Council chamber had never felt so tense. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their floating seats, all staring at the main holographic display showing the human warship still hovering above their capital planet. Emperor Kos, the aging ruler of the Empire, leaned forward in his golden throne, his weathered hands gripping the armrests. "Admiral Zhou," the Emperor's voice echoed through the massive chamber, "explain to me how a primitive human vessel managed to appear in our most secure system without any warning." Admiral Zhou stood at attention, but sweat beaded on his forehead. "Your Imperial Majesty, we're still investigating the technical aspects, but Captain Mira has agreed to address the Council directly." The chamber's lights dimmed as Captain Mira's image appeared in the center of the room, life-sized and crystal clear. She looked around at the assembled representatives with what seemed like mild curiosity, as if she were touring a museum rather than addressing the most powerful government in the galaxy. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Captain Mira began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics, "I bring greetings from the Terran Federation and humanity as a whole." Councillor Wen from the industrial world of Mekanos spoke first. "Captain, our records show that humanity has only recently developed warp drive technology. How is it possible that you've been monitoring our communications for decades, as you claimed?" Captain Mira's expression didn't change, but there was something almost amused in her eyes. "Councillor Wen, your industrial output reports from the past quarter show a 12% increase in military-grade metal production. Your shipyards in the Mekanos system have been working around the clock on what your internal documents call Project Iron Fist. Should I continue?" The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Project Iron Fist was one of the Empire's most classified military programs, known only to the highest-ranking officials. Councillor Wen's face went pale, and he sank back into his seat. General Tay stood up abruptly, her military decorations catching the light. "That information is impossible to obtain. Our security networks are impenetrable. General, 3 days ago you authorized the deployment of surveillance drones to monitor the Zilani system. Your personal authorization code was Delta 77 Kappa 9. The mission report landed on your desk yesterday morning at exactly 9:15 local time, along with your usual cup of kef tea and 2 sugar cubes." The silence in the chamber was deafening. General Tay's hand moved instinctively to her sidearm, but she stopped herself. The level of detail Captain Mira possessed was impossible unless humans had been inside their most secure facilities. "Lieutenant," Hana, who was monitoring the session from the command center, felt her hands shaking as she recorded everything. The implications were terrifying. If humans knew this much about their classified operations, what else did they know? Captain Mira continued as if she were discussing the weather. "Your expansion into the Outer Rim has been quite methodical. 43 worlds contacted in the past decade, with 27 choosing to join the Empire voluntarily. The other 16 required more persuasive measures." Emperor Kos leaned forward, his ancient eyes sharp despite his age. "What are you implying, Captain?" "I'm not implying anything, Your Majesty. I'm stating facts. The Terran Federation has detailed records of your diplomatic methods. We've observed your standard procedure. Make contact with developing civilizations, offer them the benefits of joining the Empire, and when they refuse, apply economic pressure followed by military intervention." Councillor Park from the mining consortium shifted uncomfortably. "Those are sovereign decisions made by the rightful government of this galaxy." "Perhaps," Captain Mira replied calmly, "but they're decisions that affect more than just your empire. You see, several of those 16 worlds that required persuasive measures were under Terran protection." The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives shouted questions, demanded explanations and argued among themselves. Admiral Zhou felt like the floor was falling out from under him. If humans had been secretly protecting worlds from imperial expansion, it meant their military reach was far greater than anyone had imagined. Emperor Kos raised his hand, and the chamber gradually fell silent. Captain Mira, are you telling us that humanity has been interfering in imperial expansion for decades? We prefer to think of it as maintaining galactic stability, Captain Mira answered. The Terran Federation believes that developing civilizations have the right to grow and evolve without external pressure. When the Kalari system refused to surrender their mining rights, we ensured their communications reached several neutral worlds. When the Benthan colonies faced imperial blockades, we provided humanitarian supplies through unmarked transports. General, Tay's voice was barely controlled rage. You've been sabotaging legitimate imperial operations? We've been preventing the forced subjugation of innocent populations, Captain Mira corrected. The difference in perspective is quite telling. The holographic display around Captain Mira flickered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images. Imperial fleet movements, classified battle plans, secret mining operations, diplomatic meetings. That was supposed to be private. The humans had been watching everything. Commander Yuki, monitoring from the command center, realized the full scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just about one human ship with advanced technology. This was about a civilization that had been playing a completely different game while the Empire thought they were the only major power in the galaxy. The question now, Captain Mira said as the images faded, is what happens next. The Terran Federation is prepared to step out of the shadows and engage in open diplomacy. But the terms of that engagement will depend entirely on the Empire's willingness to change its approach to expansion. Emperor Kos stared at the human captain for a long moment. And if we refuse? Captain Mira's smile was polite, but somehow made everyone in the chamber feel cold. Your Majesty, I think you'll find that's not really an option anymore. 50 years ago, when the first Imperial scout ships discovered Earth, they thought they had found exactly what their sensors showed. Them, a single world with primitive settlements, struggling to build their first space colonies. Commander Zhou had been there that day, watching from the hidden observation post on Luna's dark side as the alien vessels conducted their scans. They're buying it completely, she had whispered into her encrypted communicator, watching the Imperial. Ships focus their attention on Earth's visible cities and the small research stations orbiting nearby planets. They think what they're seeing is everything we have. The truth was far more complex. While the Empire's scouts were cataloging Earth's complete civilization, the real human expansion had been happening through technology that made their presence completely invisible. Phase shift generators, quantum stealth fields, and dimensional displacement drives that the Empire's sensors couldn't even detect, let alone understand. Captain Jin had been in command of the first true colony ship, the U.S. Pioneer, when it departed Earth's solar system 3 months before the Imperial scouts arrived. Using routes that existed in folded spacetime, the ship had reached the Kepler system without leaving any trace that conventional sensors could follow. New colony established, Jin had reported back to Terran Command through quantum-encrypted channels. Population 8,000, full industrial base operational. The Empire has no idea we're here. This had been humanity's greatest gamble. Rather than reveal their true capabilities when the Empire made first contact, they had chosen to appear weak and contained. It was a decision that went against every human instinct to show strength and independence, but the strategic advantages were enormous. Dr. Yoon, the brilliant scientist behind humanity's phase shift technology, had explained it to the secret council that made this decision. If they think we're primitive and trapped in one solar system, they'll treat us as a curiosity rather than a threat. Meanwhile, we can learn everything about them while they learn. Nothing real about us. The deception had required incredible coordination. Every human settlement the Empire could potentially discover had to appear appropriately primitive. Citizens living in these showcase colonies had to genuinely believe they were humanity's entire space presence. Only a few thousand people across all of human space knew the truth about the hidden expansion. Commander Lee had overseen the construction of the first stealth shipyards in the asteroid belt of the Ross system. Massive industrial complexes that existed in phase-shifted reality, invisible to any scanning technology the Empire possessed. "We're not just building ships," he had told his construction teams. "We're building humanity's secret future." The scale of the hidden expansion was staggering. By the time Captain Mira revealed herself to the Imperial Council, humanity had established colonies in over 200 star systems. Most were completely invisible to outside detection, existing in carefully maintained dimensional pockets that overlapped normal space without affecting it. But the colonies were just the beginning. Humanity had also been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Every major Empire facility, every important government building, every military base had been under constant observation by human operatives, who could phase in and out of normal reality at will. Agent Juan had spent 15 years working inside the Imperial Intelligence Headquarters on Vorthon Prime, appearing to be a loyal alien translator while actually documenting every classified operation. "Their security is impressive," he had reported to his handlers, "but it's designed to stop conventional espionage. They have no defenses against someone who can literally walk through walls." The human intelligence network had grown to include thousands of operatives across Empire space. They worked as merchants, translators, maintenance workers, and even low-level government employees. The Empire's xenophobia had actually helped humanity's cause, since most Imperial citizens barely noticed alien workers and assumed they were too primitive to understand what they were seeing. Captain Day had commanded one of the most dangerous missions, establishing observation posts inside active Imperial military bases. His team used portable phase generators to create tiny pockets of folded space where they could monitor everything while remaining completely undetectable. "We've been sitting in their war rooms during strategy meetings," he had reported with amazement. "They plan their operations while we're literally standing right next to them." The information humanity gathered was incredibly detailed. They knew about every Imperial military unit, every weapons system, every secret project. They had copies of classified documents, recordings of private conversations between high-ranking officials, and complete technical specifications for Imperial technology. But perhaps most importantly, humanity had been tracking the Empire's expansion patterns and learning about their true intentions toward developing civilizations. The Imperial policy was clear. Useful species were absorbed into the Empire as worker populations, while those who resisted were either enslaved or eliminated. Commander Ryu had documented dozens of worlds where the Empire's diplomatic missions had ended in conquest. "The pattern is always the same," he had reported. "They offer partnership, demand tribute, apply pressure, then send in the military. We've watched them destroy entire civilizations that just wanted to be left alone." This intelligence had driven humanity's secret decision to become the galaxy's unofficial protectors. If the Empire was systematically destroying or enslaving developing worlds, and if humanity had the technology to stop it without revealing themselves, wasn't there a moral obligation to act? The protection operations had started small. A few mysterious equipment failures during Imperial blockades, some unexplained communication disruptions during forced negotiations, gradual escalation until human forces were secretly evacuating entire populations from worlds the Empire had marked for conquest. Now, 50 years later, the scope of humanity's hidden civilization was beyond what the Empire had ever imagined possible. They weren't facing a single advanced warship or even a small fleet. They were dealing with a shadow civilization that had been watching, learning, and quietly reshaping galactic politics while remaining completely invisible. The Empire had thought they were the dominant power in their region of space. They were about to learn they had been living under the protection of guardians they never knew existed. Admiral Zhou's patience had reached its breaking point. One human ship, no matter how advanced, couldn't possibly threaten the entire Imperial fleet. He turned to his communications officer with determination burning in his eyes. "All ships, this is Fleet Command. Form a complete containment sphere around the human vessel. I want that ship surrounded from every angle. If they try to run, we'll be ready." Across the Vortan system, over 60 Imperial warships began moving into position. Massive battlecruisers, sleek destroyers, and heavily armed patrol vessels all converged on the lone human ship floating peacefully above the capital world. It was an impressive display of military might that had intimidated countless civilizations. Over the centuries, Captain Mira's voice crackled through the communication system, and Admiral Zhou could swear he heard amusement in her tone. "Admiral, that's really not necessary. In fact, I'd suggest your ships maintain their current positions for everyone's safety." "Captain," Admiral Zhou replied firmly, "you're outnumbered 60 to 1. I think it's time you realize the situation you're in." "Admiral," Captain Mira said, with what sounded like genuine sympathy, "I think you're about to discover that numbers aren't everything in modern warfare." Before Admiral Zhou could respond, Lieutenant Hana's voice cut through the bridge with barely controlled panic. "Sir, multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. They're everywhere." The tactical display exploded with new signals. Ships were materializing all around them, not just near the capital world but scattered across the entire Vortan system. The massive orbital shipyards that built the Empire's greatest vessels suddenly had human warships floating right next to them. The military command stations that coordinated Imperial defenses found themselves face to face with alien vessels that had appeared without warning. Commander Yuki stared at his screen in disbelief. "How many ships are we detecting?" "Over 200 contacts and still counting," Hana replied, her voice cracking with stress. "They're appearing near every major installation, every military base, every strategic location in the system. The human ships were unlike anything in Imperial records. Where Imperial vessels were angular and intimidating, built to project power and fear, the human ships seemed to flow like liquid metal. Their hulls shimmered with an energy that made them seem almost alive, and strange blue lights pulsed along their surfaces in patterns that hurt to look at directly." Captain Day's voice came through on a separate channel from the human vessel. "QES Storm, positioned directly above the Empire's primary weapons manufacturing facility. Admiral Zhou, Captain Day here. I've been parked here for 3 months, watching your people build those new plasma cannons. Impressive work, by the way." Another voice joined the conversation, this one from Captain Lee aboard the UES Lightning, which had somehow appeared inside the defensive perimeter of the Empire's most secure military research station. "The quantum torpedo project is particularly interesting, though I should mention you have a design flaw in the containment system that could cause some problems." Admiral Zhou felt his world crumbling around him. These human ships hadn't just appeared randomly, they had been positioned with perfect strategic precision. Every critical facility in the system was now under direct observation by vessels that had been invisible until this moment. "This is impossible," General Tay muttered from her position at the tactical station. "Our sensor sweeps cover this entire system every 6 hours. We would have detected them." Captain Mira's image appeared on the main screen again, still looking perfectly calm despite being surrounded by the Imperial fleet. "General, your last comprehensive sensor sweep was conducted 14 hours ago. Captain Day's ship was scanned directly during that sweep. Your sensors passed right through his vessel, like it wasn't there." The implications hit everyone on the bridge at the same time. If the human ships could remain completely invisible to Imperial sensors while positioned throughout their most secure system, then everything they thought they knew about military technology was wrong. But the demonstration wasn't over. The human ships began powering up their weapon systems, and the energy readings were unlike anything Imperial scientists had ever recorded. Instead of the familiar plasma buildup or particle acceleration signatures they expected, the human weapons seemed to phase in and out of normal reality. Commander Ryu aboard the UES Thunder demonstrated by firing a single test shot at an abandoned asteroid near the system's edge. The energy beam passed completely through the Imperial ships, positioned between the Thunder and its target without affecting them at all, then struck the asteroid with enough force to vaporize it completely. "Phase shift. Weaponry," Captain Mira explained casually. "Our weapons can be set to pass through specific materials while affecting others. Your ship's armor is quite impressive, Admiral, but it's designed to stop conventional attacks. The tactical display showed more impossible technology as human ships began demonstrating their defensive capabilities. When the automatic defense, platforms around Vorthan Prime fired warning shots, the energy beams simply passed through the human vessels as if they weren't there. Energy redirection fields, Captain Lee explained. We can choose what affects us and what doesn't. Your weapons are impressive, but they're not designed to fight targets that exist partially outside normal spacetime. Admiral Zhou realized with growing horror that his entire fleet was not just outgunned, but fighting with technology that was generations behind what humanity possessed. The human ships could attack while remaining untouchable, appear and disappear at will, and had been observing Imperial operations for months without being detected. "How long have you been watching us?" Admiral Zhou asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. "In this system specifically?" "About 4 months," Captain Mira replied. "We wanted to understand your defensive capabilities before making formal contact. Your people are quite dedicated, working 3 shifts to maintain security, but security systems are only effective if they can detect the threat they're designed to stop." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. 4 months of being watched without knowing it, 4 months of conducting classified operations while human observers recorded everything. "The real question, Admiral," Captain Mira continued, "is what happens next. The Terran Federation has demonstrated that we can position our forces anywhere, in Imperial space without detection. We can observe your operations, protect our interests, and project power when necessary. The question is whether the Empire wants to acknowledge this new reality peacefully, or if you prefer to learn about it the hard way." Admiral Zhou looked at his tactical display one more time. His fleet was surrounded, outmaneuvered, and facing technology they couldn't match. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted completely, and he was only now realizing it had happened years ago. Captain Mira's image appeared simultaneously on every screen throughout the Galactic Empire, not just on military vessels or government facilities, but in homes, schools, markets, and entertainment centers across hundreds of worlds. The technical impossibility of such a broadcast made Imperial communications experts stare at their equipment in confusion. "Citizens of the Galactic Empire," Captain Mira began, her voice reaching billions of beings across thousands of star systems. "I am Captain Mira of the Terran Federation. What I'm about to tell you will change how you understand your place in this galaxy." Emperor Kos gripped his throne's armrest so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Cut the transmission. Block all incoming signals." Imperial technicians frantically worked at their control panels, but nothing they did could stop the broadcast. The human signal was somehow bypassing every security protocol and communication filter the Empire had developed over centuries. For 50 years, the Terran Federation has been the unseen guardian of developing civilizations throughout this region of space. While your government spoke of bringing order and prosperity to primitive worlds, we watched as species after species face the same ultimatum: join the Empire or be destroyed. Lieutenant Hanna monitored the broadcast from the command center, watching as civilian communications networks across the Empire lit up with shocked responses. Citizens who had believed their government's propaganda about peaceful expansion were hearing a very different story, Captain Mira continued, her tone remaining calm and factual. The people of Zerion Prime chose to maintain their independence. Imperial forces blockaded their world for 6 months until their population faced starvation. The Kandari Confederation refused to surrender their mineral rights. Imperial mining. Fleets arrived with military escorts and began extraction operations regardless of local protests. Images began appearing alongside the broadcast. Real footage of Imperial military operations that were supposed to be classified, recordings of diplomatic meetings where Imperial representatives made threats, documentation of worlds that had been stripped of resources after refusing to join the Empire voluntarily. General Tay watched in horror as footage of her own military campaigns played for the entire galaxy to see. Operations she had conducted under strict secrecy were being broadcast with full documentation of the destruction they had caused. The Empire's expansion has displaced over 30 million sentient beings in the past decade alone, Captain Mira stated. Entire civilizations have been relocated to work camps or absorbed into imperial labor forces. This is the peaceful expansion your government has told you about. In the Imperial Council chamber, representatives from member worlds began demanding explanations. Many of them had joined the Empire believing they were part of a civilizing force that brought prosperity to backward planets. Learning that their military had been conducting forced relocations and resource theft was causing panic among the civilian leadership. But Captain Mira wasn't finished. The Terran Federation has documented evidence of these operations because we have been present during most of them. When the Empire moved against the farming colonies of New Harvest, Terran vessels evacuated 12,000 civilians before Imperial forces arrived. When mining operations threatened to poison the water supply of Beta Centauri 4, Terran engineers provided filtration technology to protect the local population. Admiral Zhou felt his stomach sink as he realized the full scope of human intervention. Every failed Imperial operation, every mission that had encountered unexpected complications, every time their intelligence had somehow leaked to opposing forces, it had been humanity working behind the scenes. We did not choose to remain hidden because we feared the Empire, Captain Mira explained. We remained hidden because open conflict would have caused suffering across hundreds of worlds. Instead, we chose to protect the innocent, while gathering evidence of the Empire's true methods. The broadcast showed a map of the galaxy with thousands of points of light representing worlds under Terran protection. Many were planets the Empire had never heard of, developing civilizations that humanity had been shielding from Imperial contact. Others were worlds the Empire had tried to conquer, not knowing that human forces were already there providing support. Emperor Kos finally found, his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper, "What do you want from us?" Captain Mira's expression softened slightly. "We want coexistence, Your Majesty. The galaxy is vast enough for both our civilizations to prosper. But that coexistence requires fundamental changes in how the Empire approaches expansion." "Changes," General Tay demanded. "You're dictating terms to a government that has maintained peace and order for over 3 centuries. "Peace and order for whom?" Captain Mira asked. "For the 37 species that chose voluntary membership in the Empire, or for the 22 species that were given no choice, for the worlds that benefit from Imperial trade networks, or for the worlds that have been stripped of their resources to fuel that trade." The numbers hit the Imperial leadership like physical blows. Their own classified records showed exactly those figures, but hearing them broadcast to the entire galaxy made the reality of Imperial expansion impossible. To deny Commander Yuki watched the civilian communication networks as ordinary citizens across the Empire began discussing what they had learned. Many expressed shock at learning about forced relocations and resource theft. Others defended their government, but found themselves unable to argue with the documented evidence being presented. The Terran Federation is prepared to step into the light, Captain Mira announced. "We will establish formal diplomatic relations with the Empire and other galactic governments. We will share our technology for peaceful purposes and work together to ensure the prosperity of all sentient species." She paused, letting the implications settle across the galaxy. "But we will no longer tolerate the forced subjugation of developing civilizations. Any attempt to continue aggressive expansion will be met with direct intervention. The age of Imperial dominance through military force is over." The broadcast ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings tried to process what they had learned. The Empire they thought they knew had been living under the protection of guardians they never suspected existed. Admiral Zhou stared at his tactical display, where human ships still surrounded every major Imperial facility. The demonstration was clear. Humanity wasn't conquering the Empire. They were simply making it impossible for the Empire to continue conquering others. The Galactic Empire would have to learn to coexist in a universe where they were no longer the dominant power, watched over by protectors who had been there all along, ensuring that the strong could no longer prey upon the weak without consequence. The galaxy had changed forever, and there was no going back.